What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Burn Boot Camp podcast. You're listening to Coffee with the Klines. So if you are at home, go grab a cup of coffee and join us. We are going to be talking about
the most important, or actually number one most important, not just one of the most important, the number one most important skill to leadership.
Okay. You want to say it at the same time?
3, 2, 1, listening. You've all heard your parents say this before. We have 2 ears and
one mouth.
One mouth for a reason. 80% of the time you should be listening to people. 20% of the time, roughly speaking, be talking. That's just a rule of thumb. We're not going to get generic. We're going to get really specific because not all types of listening are made equal. There is a hierarchy. There are different types, and we're going to talk about the 3 types of listening, and then we're going to tell you what we actually, where we used to be and where we are today.
Yes, and just so you guys know, you may be listening to this now, but a lot of this stuff is coming from hard lessons that Devan and I have learned through 10 plus years of being in business together.
And married,
building a brand. We did not have this all figured out 10 years ago, not let alone 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't think we still have it figured
out.
We
still don't have it figured out.
We just have like a good foundational knowledge, enough where we feel the need to pay it forward to other people.
Yes.
Because we get to interact a lot with the communities, and we get to see that, hey, leadership is like one of the biggest gaps out there. We need more leaders.
Yeah.
We need more leaders.
Let's also set the stage here that we're not just talking about in business, right?
Yeah.
You are a leader in your home, you're a leader in your community, you're a leader in your circle of influence, and you're a leader at your work. And whether you have a team of people or not, everybody has the opportunity to be a leader, right? Leadership is not a title, it is a choice. It's how you act and walk and talk and listen, right?
Yes.
So this could apply to you and how you listen to your children, right? And listen more than you're actually talking at them or to them. And that's been a hard skill for me to learn, because you go through, the first several years of their life where they're not really talking, right? And so you're the one doing the talking and teaching them all the things, but we're starting to be at the phase of our kids' lives where it's actually more important for us to listen to what they're saying and what's on their mind. And so this has been a good reminder.
It has, yeah, and saying like, Max and Ryan, stop yelling at each other. Like that's probably not good to yell at them, to tell them to stop yelling at each other. So I found myself like doing that a couple of times early on. I'm like, okay, we need to get this listening game on. Listen, yourself, you got to lead yourself. You got to lead yourself. If you're not able to self-identify when you're not being a good listener, then you're not actually leading yourself. So it all starts and stops with you as an individual. But once you can master leadership of oneself, then you have an opportunity to do so with your family and your community. Yep. And so let's talk about passive, selective, and active listening. These are the 3 types of listening. It's passive, it's selective, and it's active. And you can probably infer which one Morgan and I are going to recommend to you, but we're just going to break those down really quick because there are 3 different types of listening, and you're probably going to know as we go through each example when you've been in situations when people are listening to you passively, selectively, or actively, or you've been listening to somebody else in one of those 3 ways. So let's start with passive, Morgan, and tell everybody, let's define passive first. What is passive listening?
Oh, I don't know the true definition.
Well, Morgan Kline's definition.
I just feel like, to me, when I hear the word passive, it's just like you're not engaged. You're kind of just laid back and just listening, but not really caring. Mm-hmm. To me,
in one ear, out the other.
Yes, that's
type
a great
thing.
example. In one ear, out the other. So
I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes our kids definitely are passive listeners when they're listening to us. But
we talk about the next one too, and then we'll argue which one that they actually are.
I think ultimately it boils down to listening but not caring, right? And so, have you ever been in a situation, let's say at work, where you are talking to your boss and they're just kind of pretending like they're listening, but they're really just waiting until the meeting's over so they can leave and go do the next thing? They're not engaged, they're not asking questions. They're not, giving you that body language. They're
not leaning in.
They're not leaning in.
Brows down.
They're just kind of there. Or somebody in a meeting who is maybe not engaged, right? They're on their computer. They're reading their phone. To me, those are also passive listeners because they're not giving you that eye contact and that credit or the attention that you deserve. So as a leader, we don't want to do this, right? Because how does that make people feel when you're passively listening?
Not heard, not seen, not important, not felt. essentially disrespect the other person that's likely and most oftentimes has spent a lot of time, energy, and effort to muster up the courage and the information and the knowledge and to twist all that stuff together to actually represent what's on their minds, which is scary in itself. And then, you're not even paying attention. You're not even listening to them.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times have you've been behind the scenes of somebody that gets really excited for like a presentation or a PowerPoint or a speech or a promotional conversation at work, and then, they're disappointed because they got home that night and like reported back that the person didn't even care or give them like any sense of or time of the day. So passive, in one ear, out the other.
When is it a good time to be a passive listener, or do we believe that it is ever a good time?
I don't think you should ever be a passive listener.
Maybe like,
unless you're listening to like a podcast passively, and you're working out and the information in it is just there. It's not like important information. You can listen passively to music. You can listen passive, but don't listen passively to other people, especially when they're addressing you face to face or like one on a small group. You want to passive listen in an audience, but be my guest. That's just only going to hurt you, and you're not going to be able to retain that information. So I would say almost never.
Almost never.
Almost never. Okay, selective. Now this is
the worst kind to me.
Yeah. This is to me like I hear you with like the kids are passively listening on certain things. I also think they're selectively listening on a lot of things, because if I say, "Hey Ryan, all right buddy, it's time to go. We got to get going." And he just acts like he doesn't even hear me. As soon as I say, "Hey buddy, want to go get ice cream?" Oh, he sprints to me as fast as he possibly can. And y'all know this as parents, right? So he was listening to me. He was hearing the words come out of my mouth. But he wasn't.
Wanted to hear what he wanted to hear.
He was paying attention selectively, and he wasn't going to acknowledge me unless it was something that was in alignment with his vibration, his frequency, and his agenda. Selective listening is ego-driven.
Yeah. So another example, I think, in more of an adult context, is when someone's listening to you to like already form the argument back to you. So they may be pulling things out that they're hearing that are only in their mind supporting their rebuttal back to you. So that's another form of selective listening. And in leadership, I think, again, it just goes back to you're not giving somebody the actual credit that they deserve, the time of the day, and you're not really hearing them, right? Again, you're like just trying to get through the conversation and hear only what you want to hear, whether it's a confrontational conversation or a positive and productive one, making sure that you're actually like giving that full attention. So
I wouldn't say that we never want to have selective listening, because there's certain times when it can be useful. For an example,
I have one too.
For an example, in a negotiation, if you're negotiating with somebody and you're trying to really persuade that person to, genuinely do a good deal, you might want to selective listen and not like listen to every little tiny thing they have to say or every little circumstance. That's one. Do you have another one right off the top?
Well,
I got one other point.
And I hope this still is helpful in this setting of like leadership, but I think you also need to be selective on who you listen to sometimes, right? From a advice standpoint, from a feedback standpoint. So I guess this doesn't necessarily translate always in like a leader or a boss and a employee, but I think in life, I want to just say that sometimes you need to have selective hearing and selective listening on whose voices you actually allow to penetrate your mental capacity.
Yeah.
So that would be my example, is to be selective when it protects you.
I think so. As an example, if you're having an argument, let's say a husband and wife are having an argument, right? And you see this in politics a lot too. Selective listening is a lot of times what happens in politics, and you'll see this. I hope you guys can follow this here. So there's two types of arguments that somebody could make, or rebuttals that somebody could make in a selective listening approach. You have a strong man and you have a steel man. A straw man, like STRAW, straw man, and steel man, like STEEL. And so straw man is it's selectively listening and taking the weakest point of somebody's argument, okay, and then using that to then have their point stand on. So let's just do a quick example. So a normal everyday household scenario, mom and dad are arguing, and
Devin, you didn't put the clothes in the pamper again.
Give me 3 more things that I didn't do, and 2 of them have to be really serious. Okay, I already had one in my mind, so let me do it. Okay, so it's like, a mom's talking to a dad, and a mom's like, hey, you haven't slept in our room in 6 months. You didn't take the trash out last week. You're not paying attention to your kids in their school, and you leave your clothes on the counter every single day. A straw man would be the dad then responding and saying, oh, I leave my clothes on the ground every day. Oh, that's all what you're mad about is just me leaving the clothes on the ground. Oh, and it's all you want to do is nag and blah, 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 right? He's taking the weakest point of that argument when really not having a spousal relationship and not paying attention to the kids at school are much deeper issues that this man is insecure about. He'll straw man that argument, and he'll take the weakest point of the mom's argument and then spin that to be the basis of the entire argument. And then the opposite is the steel man, where you basically make somebody else's argument stronger. So he might say in this scenario, like, you're right, I haven't been here present in 6 months as a husband. I haven't gone to my kids' school events and paid attention to their report cards. I do leave stuff down on the floor, and I don't clean. And not only that, right, I haven't been to work on time in 8 months. I'm gaining 20 pounds. Like, I'm over here.
Making it about them?
No, see, what I'm doing now is saying, yes, you're right, and all of these other things. So not only are you right, but I'm going to actually make your argument stronger for you. And I'm going to say, yes, you're absolutely right, and here's all the things extra that you didn't catch that also make me a pig in this moment, and I agree with you. And so the selective listening approach can work really, really well if you steel man. You guys follow me? Don't straw man. If I steel man the argument, I'm going to walk away from that. Morgan, whoever that person was, this was not a real example, by the way, whoever that person was, that mom, she's going to walk away from the argument if I steel man it and say, yeah, he's listening to me, he understands me, he gets me, and not only that, he not only agreed with me, he added more to it. Okay, now we're making some progress here, right? If I make it all about the dirty laundry on the floor now and address the real issues, what's the other side going to say? You're not even paying attention to what I'm saying. You are not listening to me, right? So that's a scenario. I know it's a little complex, but that's a scenario where selective listening can go one way or the other. But number 3, Morgan, is active listening. And this is what we should be doing all the time once we get really good at it. And if you can active listen, you shouldn't really be selective or passively listening ever if you can do active really well.
Yeah, I think active listening is, we've talked about it, right? It's the body language you're giving off. It's the attention you're giving. It's the eye contact. It's not interrupting, right? It's like holding your questions and letting somebody have the floor and listening to the whole thing before you like stop them in their tracks and stop listening and then need to get your questions out and your arguments out. That's what active listening is to me.
And you're leaning in. You said body language, right? And I think the last point to active listening, because I think it's like a global listening, right? You're looking for all of the signs and you're trying to take all of the pieces and make sure that you're able to tell the story of what this person's actually trying to say. And then the key piece of active listening is to repeat back what you thought the person had said. Yeah. So I'm going to repeat back to you what I thought I heard, and then I'm going to confirm whether or not that is actually what you said. And that way, I'm certain that we have clarity. And when we have clarity together in our relationship, in our communication, then we have confidence. And we have confidence, we have trust. When we have trust, we have a relationship that can take the next level deeper. And you can keep building on that trust by just actively listening to people, repeating back the things that they're saying, and repeating them back in a way that lets them know how they care, like you care, and they are listening. Like one of the worst things, and now I'll stop and I'll let you close it out, but one of the worst things I've ever seen, like the worst selective listening that I've seen is we were touring some houses one time, and we're using words. Like I'm using the words like we want like a open environment. We want glass doors so we can see out the backyard. We want it to feel like our home away from home because we're from Michigan, right? And the person walking us around is not listening to anything I'm saying, and all they're doing is showing me the features of the house that we don't really care about. If you would have listened to me say, I want a immaculate entryway, then somewhere in that conversation, they should have said, hey, this next house that we're going to see, it's going to show you an immaculate entryway just like you want, right? It's like, just listen to people,
So
listen to the
repeat back
words
things
they're
they
saying.
said, just to show them
and
that
repeat
you've
them
actually
back.
listened to them.
Yeah.
Good
So,
stuff.
yeah,
All right.
Okay.
So
That's like her short way of making me long-winded. Go short, and then she'll wrap it up. Wrap it up. Okay.
So, all right, guys, 3 ways that you're listening. I think our challenge to you is to really start to assess, are you an active listener, a passive listener, a selective listener? And do you change your listening on different, with different people or in different settings? And just try to catch yourself. Have that self-awareness of where you can be a better listener. And, hopefully these were some good tips for you.
So what I think I heard you tell them to do was select between passive, active, and selective. Figure out where you're at and try to get to active over the long run through interactions. Is that correct?
Very good.
All right. Sweet.
All right, you got it.
Active listening.
All right, guys.
101.
Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Come check us out on Instagram, Devan.Kline and Morgan.A.Kline. We would love to interact with you over there. Thanks again. We'll talk to you guys later.
2 claps on 2.
1, 2.